United States in 2026 has officially crossed over to becoming a nation of the walking dead. What I mean is, America has all the characteristics of a zombie corporation, with all the defining negative effects. I'll explain why this nation is on life support, a living existence that is on borrowed time. Elle will break down why the zombie apocalypse has already hit the West, but yet, the leaders and the people who are walking around live in blissful denial of that obvious fact, the fact that the nation they're living in is a shambling corpse that was infected with a sociological and financial virus not too long ago. To begin, let's explain what a zombie corporation is. Pay attention to the similarities of a zombie corporation and what is happening in the financial circles of America now. A zombie company is a mature business that can't generate enough profit to cover its debt and borrowing costs over time. They are characterized by poor future prospects, prolonged underperformance, and are often associated with low productivity. Zombie companies generate just enough cash to service their debt, preventing banks from pulling the plug on loans at sea. A zombie corporation is a financially distressed company that earns just enough revenue to continue operating and pay interest on its debt, but not enough to repay the principal or invest in growth. These companies are considered living dead because they survive on low interest rates and refinancing, often stalling economic productivity. Key characteristics and risks are high debt levels. They often have massive historic debt, making them heavily dependent on continued credit access. Low productivity. Because they cannot afford research and development, they do not grow, often holding back more efficient business opportunities. Too big to fail mentality. They may receive implicit or explicit support from creditors or governments to avoid immediate insolvency, similar to the Japanese firms in the 90s. They are highly susceptible to market changes and rising interest rates, which can turn a zombie corporation into a bankrupt company instantly. Zombie companies hinder creative growth, which fosters a sycophantic environment where inefficiency flourishes, which ties up capital and labor that could be used to promote a healthier, expanding business outlook. So now let's explain how America runs the same way a zombie corporation does. The U.S. financial system exhibits characteristics of a zombie corporation due to a growing number of irresponsible fiscal behaviors, like being unable to cover debt servicing costs from profits, relying instead on cheap credit and federal support, fueled by low interest rates and debt addiction. America has over $38 trillion in debt, which creates a tremendous drag on economic productivity. There's a saying that life is stranger than fiction, and that applies immensely in this moment right here, because in the movie called Wall Street, the character Gordon Gekko predicted this outcome. In his famous 1987 speech, Gordon, played by Michael Douglas, stated back then that the country was being mismanaged, calling it that other malfunctioning corporation called the USA. In his speech, he argues that, like the struggling business, the country is plagued by inefficient bureaucratic management that fails its shareholders. He claims that the U.S. has become a second-rate power due to poor leadership and excessive overhead. He equates the country to a company, suggesting it is failing in its duties and needs in his view, productive force. Gekko did not explicitly use the modern term zombie corporation in the 1987 film, but his description of American industries as a failed, bloated entity that needed to be liberated by a corporate-like hostile takeover still carries weight today because he identifies the financial structural system of the U.S. as an entity dysfunctionally dead. Remember, the major identification mark of a zombie corporation is they cannot pay back their debt. Countless financial experts have been shouting from the rooftops, like Ray Dalio, Peter Schiff, and many others, all saying the same thing, that the fiscal trajectory of America's U.S. Treasury is on life support, because the debt-to-GDP ratio exceeded 100% in 2013 and was around 124% by early 2026, with projections suggesting it could exceed 200% by 2046. This constant upward trend is defined by the Congressional Budget Office as unsustainable. The zombie effects come from the fact that they can't pay down what they owe. The interest payments' rising debt levels combined with higher interest rates mean that interest payments are increasingly crowding out other public spending. Gecko said the U.S. is bureaucratically obese, with a political policy. Many observers argue that the inability to make hard choices on taxes and spending cripples them, which then promotes stagnation, a zombie nation bloated with bureaucracy, infected with festering wounds that spread from stagnation, where all its reanimated movements stem from survival only by borrowing. You may say, why is 2026 so significant in exposing that America is now a full-fledged zombie-like corporation? Well, it's the psychological effects of what happens when a corporation faces its own mortality. The countless bad fiscal decisions that the company has made can no longer be excused away. This is why you see rapid changes in the international standing. The U.S. ranks in the middle regarding economic sustainability, with a tax system that does not produce enough revenue to meet obligations. So, when did America cross over to be a financial zombie like nation? Statistics, financial figures, and historical analysis strongly support the conclusion that the Vietnam War caused severe long-term damage to the U.S. economy, contributing to a period of stagflation, a massive rise in national debt, and the end of a golden era of American economic growth. The war was largely funded through deficit spending, which created enormous financial strain and fueled high inflation throughout the late 60s and early 70s. The U.S. was spending vast sums on the conflict while simultaneously attempting to fund the Great Society domestic programs. Just like a mismanaged zombie corporation, instead of facing those facts, what they did was they cooked the books and changed the rules. It was Johnson and Nixon administrations who hid the true cost of the war, and the Federal Reserve that allowed the rapid monetary expansion, essentially printing money to buy government bonds to mask the true cost of the conflict. And on that day is when they became infected with the zombie virus and began to decay from that very moment. The most tragic story in the zombie genre is the zombie that still believes it's alive, walking aimlessly without a purpose or plan, only remembering fragments of nostalgic moments in the past. A living dead, it still walks, it still moves, it still has basic functions, but it is no longer alive in the truest sense of the word. So to conclude, we all can feel it, and the data backs it up. The verdict is in. Look all around you right now. That decay you can smell in the air, that hopelessness you can see in the decaying infrastructure, that nihilism that exists underneath the surface of self-serving gratification above all. Yes, people may still go out to eat, and corporations incentivized by profit may still push to build. Families may still shop, kids may still go to school. And if you ignore all of these things, you can even go out and dance and have fun. But just like a zombie that may appear to be alive, the same thing has happened financially to the nation and the people who depend on it. It's a decaying system, a welfare dependency addicted to continued borrowing and living on borrowed time to maintain current pretense of living standards. It's a living corpse wearing a suit pretending to be alive. Most will ignore these facts only to be surprised later on when they realize the economic legs can no longer support the reanimated living fallacy, as it buckles from years of putrid rot and decay.